Of course, the Independent's ownership has changed several times over the years. I mean, we had a great period of stability at the outset from 1986 up until 1994, and it became quite clear in about 1994 that the economics were not sustainable, that all the things that had eaten into our circulation were having an effect, that we couldn't sustain the Sunday paper, that the circulation was dropping because of the Times price cut, that the Observer or the Guardian was eroding our circulation as well. We were facing our competitors basically had got their act together. There was a famous memo to his staff by Simon Jenkin, who was then the editor of the Times, who said, and I think this was a sort of slightly about 91, 92, something like that, so the Independent has parked their tanks on our lawn. And that was, and it was about then that the Times cut its price. So there was the opposition had got their act together, and Andreas Winton Smith and the founders had slightly fallen out because Stephen Glover, who became the editor of the Independent on Sunday, had set up a slightly separate empire and had fallen out with Matthew Simons and Andreas Whittam Smith, and still to even today, I think relations are not good. The key event was when Glover invited, I think it was the Prime Minister at the time, I think it was John Major, to lunch at our offices at City Road, and had not told Andreas or Matthew about this. And this was considered to be gravely discourteous and secretive and not really in the spirit of the three founders. And so the things got a bit troubled, and there was a search for a partnership with a new owner, and eventually I struggle a little over some of the details, but the paper was bought out. Was basically sold to the Daily Mirror enterprise, to Trinity Mirror. And there was also a part share from the independent newspapers in Ireland, which were run by Tony O'Reilly. And what happened was, as part of that deal, we were to move into the offices that Trinity Mirror were then renting in Canary Wharf, in the Canary Wharf tower block. So in 1994, early 95, I can't exactly remember when, we moved to the tower block at Canary Wharf. And this was a massive change from this kind of, quite self-contained little office block that we had in City Road to being part of this sort of Canary Wharf full of bankers. But a lot of other Fleet Street newspapers had moved into Canary Wharf because there was a point when office rents there were very low, because to digress, Canary Wharf had been built as a speculative development. It hadn't really made to work. There was a bit of a slump in the early 90s in the economy. They couldn't sell the properties or rent properties. And so a lot of Fleet Street newspapers took over offices in what was then the one tower block, one Canada Square, with the triangular top on it. And so we were on floor 18. The Daily Mirror and the Sunday Mirror and the People were on floors 22 to 24. And the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph were on, I think, floors 9, 10 and 11 or something like that. So it was a vertical Fleet Street. And it was quite remarkable that you had all these journalists in one building. And it kind of helped, actually. There was a period when it felt quite interesting, because you had a kind of accumulation of journalists, and journalists for a while were the kind of bit of the kind of dominant cultural figures on the landscape. That's all changed now, because Canary Wharf then exploded with a kind of boom of the late 90s and early 2000s, and it's basically now full of bankers who've got us into the state that we're all in the economy. But for a while, it was quite nice to be there. And I remember one day in the lift, I've been having a lunch with a friend from the Daily Mirror, and we got into the lift, and there was the legendary Marge Proops, who was this almost mythical figure, had been the kind of agony aunt on the Daily Mirror for like 100 years or something. Completely, and there she was in the lift going to the Daily Mirror offices. And so it was a kind of that was an interesting period. And so we had a couple of years of stability there, and that was when we had the bombing of Canary Wharf and so forth.